Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another conversation with Age in Spain. Today we have with us Deepika Harjani, who is the regional coordinator for the Canaries, and we have a very special guest and also a time-to-time volunteer with Age in Spain, Daniel Kenyon. Um, Today, the reason of this event is to talk a bit about how to register children in the Spanish system, how childs can become residents, and what their parents can do in order to achieve this process and make it as easy as possible. We will try to structure the conversation in a way that is understandable, and Dani will share with us her own experience registering her son in Barcelona. So Deepika, I pass it to you.
Thank you, Mark. So, one of the first things I would like to share with all of you is that when the month of September started, we did a campaign about going back to school in Spain and encouraging parents that hadn't registered their children to please do so. It is very important to understand that in Spain, all children need to have their own residency documents. So, we're talking about the green residency document or the new TIE, but we'll get more into details later on. But the important thing is that children need to have their own identification. They also need to be registered in the healthcare system. And I understand that some kids go to schools that are perhaps not Spanish statutory schools, but it's important, regardless in which school they are, that they have a registration, and you can take the opportunities such as like the summer holidays, Christmas holidays, or half term to get these things down in order not to take kids out of school. But this is very important. So that's what we're here.
Thank you, Deepika. Indeed, sometimes we might think that because they are so little, they do not count in these systems. That at least until certain age. But the truth is that as soon as you can register your child, the better, regardless of the age. This way, you ensure that you have access to a healthcare system that is public, that they are protected in many ways and in many rights. And now. I'll through a little bit of an overview of what the process is about. So, first of all, how to register a child as a resident from scratch. So, let's say that the child was either born in Spain when as a UK national resident, you were already living there, or you all came to Spain before the end of 2020 and are under the scope of the withdrawal agreement. In this case, the child is registered in a very similar way to what it's basically the same process as the adult with some key differences. The first one is that as their parents, the parents are the representative of the child. So, for example, when filling the usual forms, the EX20, there is a section that is for the parents to fill in, which is the second one, which they have to include all their data and then specify that this child is a family member. And then with all the documents that you will provide, there are two key ones that you need to show. The first one is a birth certificate that confirms this relationship of parenthood and child. And the second key document is the sufficient economic means. Of course, as a child, it doesn't work. It probably doesn't have a big budget, let's say it this way. So, as a parents, you need to provide your own bank statements reflecting, as usual, at least 3 months in the past. The more the better, and showing that you have enough money to sustain yourself and the kid in order to become residents. That's overall the basics of this procedure. But now we will go through some concretes because there are many situations, right, when parents, for one reason or another, cannot be together. Maybe the mother or one parent works abroad for a long time, and this registration process has to be carried out just by one parent. As a general rule, the police authorities will request both parents to be present when the fingerprints are taken, when the documents are presented. But in case only one parent can be at that spot at the time, then that parent needs to present a document, an official document that offers a legal reason on why is that. For example, if it is a divorce, then the custody letter or a court resolution that confirms this separation. Now, there is another part of the process, which is in case the children was already living here with the parents and it had a green certificate, the old EU residency certificate. In this case, children also, in the same way as their parents, have to get the exchange done for the TA. In this case, the process is very similar to the parents. The parents we will be acting as representatives, of course, because the child is a dependent, will be presenting sufficient economic means if required by the police, and will both have to be present also during the exchange, with the exceptions that we mentioned before, in case there is a situation of a separation, of a divorce, or any other kind of situation that allows only one parent to be during this process. I think that at this point, we can maybe jump to Dani, because she has recently gone through this exchange process. And I think having your experience can be very enlightening to all of us, that we know about the theory, but we never got to actually experience it. So it's on your court, Dani.
Okay, so first of all, my son was born here and we did get him the green EU residency when he was a baby. But unfortunately, I lost that recently. So the first thing I needed to do was to get a denuncia from the police to say that it's lost. And I took that, rather than taking the certificate, I took that with me as proof of we did have this, we now don't. And they did ask for that. So if it's gone missing for whatever reason, that is important. Another issue that came up with mine, I have a digital certificate, so I just assumed that the night before I'd be able to download a copy of the Padron. And then it came to the night before, and it turned out my digital certificate only works for me and not for him, even though he's my dependent. So I ended up having to go to the OAC office to get a new Padron for him. And you also can't print it off in the machine there, so you need an appointment. You need to actually physically see a person. If it's for a minor child, they won't let you print it in the machine. So that was an important step that I didn't realise. And the rest of it went quite smoothly. I had the EX23, the photographs, passport, copies of everything. And yeah, so we got the fingerprints done, and we were ready to go.
Well, sounds great. It looks like it was, in this case, quite a smooth process. Deepika?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Danny, because we were mentioning at the beginning about the documents when it's only one parent, which I think is your case. So can you explain what type of documents you took with you, or you recommend parents in your situation to do?
Yeah, I took the we have a court resolution from the separation. So we weren't actually married, but because we had a child and a house together when we broke up, we did it via the court just to have everything kind of sorted. And I took that with me to say that I have primary custody as dad has visitation. And they accepted that, no problem. So but yeah, that's another thing that I forgot we had that. Yeah.
And that was in Spanish. It was written in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's also important, that any documents that we provide that are in English need to be in Spanish. And on that note, if we're going to provide a birth certificate of our child and our child wasn't born in Spain, that birth certificate also needs to be legalized, which means apostille. It has to have a stamp. And this is something you can order in gov.uk website. There is a legislation office. You have to bear in mind that at the current moment, they might not work at the same speed due to COVID or some other crisis. So it's important to allow time to yourself, because these certificates can take time. And then, although we might always have like a nice friend that is happy to translate a certificate for us, we cannot rely on that friend or acquaintance if that person is not an official translator, because the Extranjería offices or the police authorities will do a check to see if the stamp of your official translator belongs to an official translator from the government list. So bear in mind those two things. I think that's great
Yeah,
mention.
and as mentioned by Danny, by Deepika, do not think of a children's application as a lesser version of a residency. They will obtain a full residency permit, and that will require every single document that an adult might need, plus all the documents that child needs, as we mentioned before, uh, in case the separation. Then the letter confirming that, the translated and legalized birth certificate, as Deepika said, uh, padrons as well. I remember you mentioning, Danny, that you tried with a certificado de convivencia, and that
Yeah,
wasn't enough, right? Like she needed, well, that in this case, your kid needed his own padron certificate,
yeah,
which you take individually. This is not the one to prove that you live with someone else, but it's your own. So it's
yeah.
really, someone could imagine that there would be some mitigated aspects about this application, but it is really a fully fledged one. So if anyone watching is planning on register their child, beware that you really need all the documents that you also needed to register, including those extra ones that we mentioned.
Um,
Um,
And yeah,
Deepika, yeah?
perhaps we can touch base on the sufficient means that we were talking about. So, for example, if a parent is currently working, they can take the work contract. If they are self employed, they should have like some registration documents of self employment. And if they are in any of those two both scenarios, they are already in the social security system. So, perhaps as an addition, you can take a document showing that you are affiliated to to the social security in Spain, because in Spain parents give that they have access to the social security, and that access is extendable to the children. So that's important to take into account in order to provide evidence. If we have parents who, for any reason, they have lots of savings and they're not currently working here, or perhaps they're working somewhere else because some people are frontier workers or other circumstances, then you will have to prove sufficient means, not only for yourself but also for your dependents, and that will be proven by bank statements. And remember that you always have to increase the amount. So if the amount is 5,400 euros per adult, then you have an additional 300 something. But always remember to check the figures, because these figures can change, and it's important to keep updated with what is currently being required.
Yeah, the most recent figures, if I remember correctly, it was around 5,500 and something per adult plus 3,000 per dependent. So remember that if you're registering your children after you already become a resident, presenting only five, if your account has only 5,000, um, that might be a problem, because they need to see that there is enough financial means to sustain not only an adult but also the family. So be aware of that.
And on that note, I understand with the current situation of COVID, some of these parents who are particularly watching us or going to watch us in the future might be on ERTE or in paro. So it's important that they also, get a certificate showing that although they are on ERTE on paro, they are receiving an income. So that hopefully should help them with the process. But as always, we're here to help. So if you struggle with difficulties in your current exchange or in the current application, you can always come to us.
Mhm. So I wanted to go back to Danny, because I'm very interested in how was her experience with her kids since he arrived in Spain, even before you got the EU Green Certificate with him. What was the initial motivation on registering your child as a resident? What was the
Well,
process?
he was born here, so
And you
we
did it
just,
directly, right?
yeah, pretty much we kind of just got all of the paperwork done in one go and thought that was us for life. But then obviously that didn't
So
work out that
responsible.
way. It was
Yeah,
easier to do when I was on maternity leave than trying to fit it around work time. So,
absolutely.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
because in age in Spain, of course, we every day we receive a lot of inquiries, and some of them are from parents that haven't registered their child for maybe the past 10 years. And that is actually a problem because while we had freedom of movement, um, this was uh, diluted a bit. It wasn't so needed. The access to the basic rights was more or less guaranteed. But now those unregistered childs are going through some problems. If they want to go abroad to study and they were not registered as residents, they might lose their temporary new ones. So one of the most important things, if a child is born or if you come with your child, register it as soon as possible in the same way that you would register yourself, because the rights that you receive because of residency, they will also get them. Deepika?
Um, and on that note, Danny, you must remember probably you did get his passport first because you do need proof of identification to get the residency document. So I'm assuming that you either applied for his UK passport in the UK because he's not a Spanish national, no? He doesn't hold
No,
a
he's
Spanish
British.
passport. So one thing is important is to bear in mind that even babies need a British passport as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the reason we actually got the residency in the first place, I mean, I'm going back quite a lot of years now, but I wanted to open him a bank account to put savings in for him, and they wouldn't accept a British passport. So they needed a Spanish identification number, so we got him the residency.
Yeah. No, in general, to just move around, it is really difficult without residency, without that NIE number as well. It allows you to do such a basic things such as opening a bank account. Um, Deepika, there is any other thing?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out something important that we adults don't change our faces maybe so much, but
Yeah.
it's important that now that we have the new TIE in place, it's not so much the validity of the TIE might be minor, like might be different for the children because children need to update the pictures much more because the massive change of 10 years could be make a big difference. So the same way that when a child gets a passport, they don't get it for 10 years, they get it for lesser time. It could be that the TIE is the same. So it's important. And I haven't seen yet any baby TIEs. Some of you will be the first one telling us that experience. So feel free to share. But I'm assuming that there won't be fingerprints for that baby, but there will be a picture to recognize and give validity to the person. So that's important.
Yes, and if your child has already the EU Green Certificate and you need to exchange it for the new tier, remember also that depending on how old is that green card, if it's 3, 4 year olds, and the age of your children, you might need to bring some extra documents so the authorities can verify the identity of the child, right, Danny? I remember you mentioned on a
Yeah,
conversation we had another day about many different things, photographs.
yeah, mine was when I had to get an emergency passport to go back to the UK
Oh yeah.
quickly, and his passport had expired, and so we were back and forth to the embassy for days because they wanted we got his passport when he was like a baby, newborn, pretty much.
Hmm.
And then this was when it must have been when he was 5 because it's 5 years, so 5 or 6, and they wouldn't just accept that, this is him now, this is a photo of him as a baby. I had to go back through my Facebook and kind of provide like an evolution of him throughout the years, so before they'd issue the passport, so that they could see how he'd changed through the years.
Very interesting. Just a word
Um,
out for anyone who is watching us right now. If you have any question, feel free to drop a comment and we will answer them. Or we can also answer your queries if you decide to write to our helpline in case your inquiry is more complicated than what a comment can offer. I just encourage you to do that. Deepika? On to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the police report because I know it can be quite challenging because it's something that you probably have to wait in a queue to do the police report, and there is a way to actually do. In some commissarias, you can do the police online. You can do the police report online, and then you get a reference, and then all you need to do, you still perhaps need to wait in a queue or wait to till be attended by a police officer, but the awaiting time is much less because, I mean, once you're already in with the police, they only need to print your application that you already have done with your own confidence at home at your own space. Whereas if you go, you perhaps struggle with the language and don't want to translate the whole situation. So I suggest that perhaps rather than leaving everything for the last moment, if you have lost the certificate, then start with the police report and then with the rest of the documents. And the TASA forms also need to be paid. Always remember that the name of the solicitante is the name of the children, and parents or carers as act as representative. And I said carers because we could have circumstances where perhaps someone else and not the parents are actually classified as the legal guardian of that child. So that's also important, and they need to show with the document that they are that legal guardian. So keep that in mind.
Thanks, Deepika. And one last thing that I think it's actually quite important, it slipped away, but now it came back, is the fact that of dependency, when your child is your dependent and when it is not. So under Spanish law, a child who is under 18 will automatically be considered a dependent of their parents. However, and this will grant this child automatic access to the healthcare coverage of their parents, to the state healthcare, in case their parents are contributing towards the social security system in Spain. If they are working in Spain, they have a contract, they are employed in a company, or have their own business. However, from 18 years old till 26, these children can still be dependents of their parents economically and access to this state healthcare. But after those 26-year-olds, this advantage, this benefit is over. So if your child turns 18, you might have to go to the INSS to regularize the situation, to tell that he continues being your dependent and that he should continue having access to the state healthcare based on your contributions. But there is a limit to that, and it's something to be aware. 26 years is a lot of years, but we are aware that in some situations with COVID, the financial stability has become a luxury for a lot of people, and we believe this is something interesting that everyone should know about. Deepika, now coming back to you, do we have anything else that we want to overview? Any other point?
No, I think those we have kind of touched base on the most important points. And yeah, it's important that people are in the padron, as you know. Now, because of Brexit, the amount of times that you have to continue updating your padron has changed. So speak with your town hall to find out when exactly, like how frequently you have to do an update. And it's important that once you do your update, you also do your children's one. Also, something that I wanted to mention, that some parents might be worried, especially because the kids have residency but they have decided to study, for example, abroad. The absences for them, for children who are studying abroad, is not the same count that the absences for adults that are not studying. So if a child needs to study in the UK and the school term is 9 months, and that means they are only living in Spain less than 6 months. But these cases are excluded because they are in education and they can prove that there is a reason behind it. Especially also other Spanish nationals also live and study abroad. So, and they haven't lost, the right to be living in Spain. So it's important to take that into account. as well. And I think, yeah, those are the most important thing to mention. Please, if you perhaps might have your children register, but you know a friend that hasn't, so share the message. We are a community. We're here to help each other. And even though we see tiny babies, they need, and I know that through the pandemic, there's been a lot of babies who have born, so it's quite important to do it and to register the birth on time and keep all of the paperwork. So yeah, that's something important.
Thank you, Deepika. Thank you, Danny. And thank you, the viewers that came to see this video. If you have an inquiry, if you don't know where to start when registering your child, or you don't know where to start any other residency related process, feel free to call us on the number that appears on screen, or send us an inquiry via our inquiry form or to the email address that also appears on screen. We still continue working from Monday to Friday, and we continue to be here for you. Thank you for coming, and good afternoon.